Hello, my name is Colin Fogarty, and I love Seattle, in part because it's such a great public radio town. So if you'll indulge me, can we have a round of applause for our friends at KEXP? And then, of course, I want to give a shout out to our friends at KUOW. But today, I want to give a very special round of applause. Please join me in thanking KPLU for all of their excellent work over the years. We are with you, and we always will be. So, on with the show. My name is Colin Fogarty, and as I said, I spent 20 years in public radio. I should hug the mic, shouldn't I? I shouldn't walk away from the mic. And I told stories on public radio. That was my job. And I told too many stories to count. But what I always found was that the stories that I was most drawn to, the ones I could never forget, were the ones you could not see. The stories about invisible things. The stories about things that surround us always, but you cannot see. Stories about history. And at some point I realized history surrounds us always. If you listen to every story on the radio, it is always rooted in history. We just have to listen and see, and that's what drew me to Confluence. Confluence is a donor-supported nonprofit that connects people to place through art and education. And it's a series of 6 art spaces along the Columbia River system, and I'll tell you about each one. 5 of them are by the celebrated artist Maya Lin, who shot to fame as the artist behind the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Washington, D.C. Yes, you can applaud. That's great. But don't forget, one of those projects was also done by this man, John Paul Jones, who is not the bass player for Led Zeppelin, but he is an amazing architect. Thank you, John Paul, for being here. All of these sites, these Confluence projects, are an attempt to reconnect people with the story of the peoples who lived here for thousands of years before Lewis and Clark happened through this area. And it's about the ecological and the cultural changes that happened in the 200 years since the expedition. In short, this is the story of the Northwest. And when you think about what it means to be from this region, what do you think of? The beauty, the recreation, the hiking, maybe it's windsurfing. No matter what it is for you, we share a love of this place. This is our home. And appreciating its grandeur and its beauty is one way we connect to this place. But what if I told you this windsurfer having a hilariously good time was windsurfing over the most sacred and culturally significant place in the Northwest? Bar none. The most sacred and culturally significant place in the Northwest. And I'm talking about Celilo Falls. It was a place known as the Wall Street of the West because it was a center of commerce, a center of culture for thousands of years. Celilo Falls was 6 times more powerful than Niagara Falls, the most productive fishing grounds in North America. And in 1957, it was flooded by the Dalles Dam. It's one of 32 dams along the Columbia River system. History surrounds us. Some of the electricity lighting this room likely comes from the Dalles Dam. So let's fast forward to 2001. Antone Minthorn fished Celilo Falls in 1956 when he was a young man. And in 2001, he was the tribal chair of the Umatilla Indian Reservation in northeast Oregon. And he had seen dramatic and economic and ecological progress made by Northwest tribes, and he helped lead it. And in 2001, there was a big debate going on about whether and how the Native voice could be included in the discussion about all the undaunted courage demonstrated by those great explorers, Lewis and Clark. Hey, they met people. That's what Antone was thinking about. And what's more, those people are still here. And so he had a simple question. What is a legacy? What is their legacy? Sure, but what is our legacy? And the result of that discussion that ensued was Confluence. First, they enlisted Maya Lin, and what she was interested in was not only the cultural and historical changes that occurred in the 200 years since Lewis and Clark, but also the environmental changes. By the way, these pictures, these stunning photos are by Glenn Nelson, so let's hear it up for him. Cape Disappointment on the Washington coast at the mouth of the Columbia River is where Lewis and Clark reached the Pacific Ocean and where Chinook people lived and fished. Maya helped to redesign the park and create a working fish cleaning table that is etched with the creation story, the Chinook creation story. So as you are processing your fish, you are reminded that people have been fishing and living there since time immemorial. Next is the Confluence Land Bridge at Fort Vancouver, at the confluence of the Klickitat Trail and the Columbia River. This is the site designed by John Paul Jones. It reconnects the community with the river, a connection that had been broken by railroad tracks and a freeway. Moving east, the Confluence Bird Blind at the Sandy River Delta, not far from Portland, where Lewis and Clark could not sleep one night because they heard so many birds, and where a 1,500-acre wilderness is being restored today. Inside the bird blind are the names of 134 species documented by Lewis and Clark and their environmental status today. Still moving east in Pasco, Washington, at the confluence of the Snake and the Columbia Rivers, Maya Lin designed 7 story circles that reconnect people with the cultures and the flora and the fauna of a spot that's been a gathering place for thousands of years, not just a state park. It is a sacred place, and we should always be reminded of that. Along the Snake River near Clarkston, Washington, it's just across from Lewiston. Get it? Clarkston, Lewiston. So it's at the confluence, or near the confluence of the Clearwater and the Snake River. Maya Lin designed a listening circle based on a Nez Perce blessing ceremony performed there in 2005. They created a spiritual landscape, and she built that into the land itself. And finally, Celilo Park near the Dalles, Oregon. The final Confluence project will be an elevated walkway inspired by those traditional fishing platforms that will take you to where Celilo Falls still exist. We know this from sonar, but they're underwater, silent, and invisible. And more importantly, it will take you to Celilo Falls in your heart. We hope to be done with this project in 2017. History surrounds us. It's up to us to listen and to see. Thank you very much.